Hello, everybody. It is April 22nd, 2020. Welcome to the Fifth Avenue Podcast, presented by the Fifth Avenue Cinema, Oregon's only student-run cinema, bringing you the latest in movies, movie theaters, and marvelous musings.
In this podcast, we're going to extend our movie video segment into the entirety of our podcast, and we'll be addressing the cinematography and music videos and their usage of the 4:3 format, and the PC music label and its adjacent commentary on capitalism and the influence it has on individual aesthetics and labor.
My name is Tracy Cornell. I am a 35mm projectionist. At the moment, I am currently a podcast co-host with my boy Sam. He is currently not with us right now. Not like he didn't die or nothing. He just, don't worry, he's alive. He'll be back. So what do I want to shout out? I want to shout out Nectar, the like smoothie place. I got an acai bowl, superfood bowl today. That was fire. Probably the only reason why I am still standing today. Now I don't like some real like sad shit, but it's just because that's like what's been like pumping my body right now. It's like an acai bowl full of fruit and like chia seeds and granola and all that good stuff. Antioxidants, exactly.
Low fiber.
You know what I'm saying? So, I'm your boy healthy, today, at least. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll go. This is Machiavelli. I'm the producer of the podcast. And as you were saying, antioxidants, I thought Occidentalism, but that's not what I'm going to shout out. My shout out is going to be to Best Buy's
nerd
kind of poor delivery system that they have right now. Because they said, you know what, we can deliver this to you today if you check out in the next 30 minutes today. So I checked out with 3 different cables for my monitor so I could get it today. And every time I checked out, they were like, out of stock. And I was like, that's not true. I just tried to buy this. So it just like kept declining it and canceling the order because it was out of stock. And then I was like, how about you just ship it to my house? Like it's crazy. It's not crazy. Crazy able slur. It's wild, but we can ship it directly to your house by Thursday. It's not out of stock. So Best Buy's lying. And I just wanted to let everyone know that Best Buy is lying about their speed of delivery.
Didn't know that's where we were going with this podcast, but I guess that's where we are.
I will say that the world's on fire right now, so I feel like Best Buy, I know they're like corporate overlords, whatever, but like they could just say that they don't have a 1-day shipping policy anymore.
Just say you can't deliver it to me right now. Just say that. Don't get my hopes up. I was ready. I wanted it cord. I was like, I'm gonna have it. I'm gonna have my double monitor again. But no.
Here at Fifth Avenue Podcast, we talk about the real issues.
So it's Maddie. I'm the current publicity coordinator, and in that vein, I just want to shout out Zipcar for being ready to let me live my little Californian dream of driving again. Because I would not say that I'm excited to move, but I'm real excited to drive, and that's like a very weird thing I think to look forward to, but I'm just like, I'm the one driving, not a passenger, and that's gonna be real nice.
Nah, I feel that when like my old car like went kaputski on me, it was like it was just like so annoying just to sit next, like not sit next to someone, but like have someone be in charge of my movement. I was like, I want to just get up and go to Wendy's myself, man. I don't want to ride.
No, I will say it's definitely like I am not gonna miss watching my 6'5" brother cram himself into a Jeep Cherokee. Like, I hope he gets a bigger car, but damn, it would be nice to have a car. I'm like, hey, you can sell me that.
We can leave this right here. We ain't gotta talk about it that much. But I want to ask, why do taller people always got small cars? I don't understand that.
I will say, on the personal note of like my family and me being the shortest one, I feel like it's affordability and not thinking about your legs being the actual size of a person, like by themselves, just the legs, no torso. So like, I don't know, I'm pretty average height, and I go, I have to push the seat forward for a solid minute to be able to reach the brakes.
My cousin has like one of those smart cars. It's like a Polly Pocket car. And he's like 6'2", and I'm like, bro, how do you do that? And he be doing drag, and he be coming through with like 7-inch heels. I'm like, fam, Like,
Well, you
how
never
do you-
drive in the 7-inch heels, so like I'll give him that. You're never gonna be driving in those, but still.
I don't know. If you, granted, probably not right now, but if you like in between gigs, you got to just go. Who knows?
That is fair, but like I can't imagine being 6'9" and trying to drive a smart car.
I'm Matt. I am the ex-events coordinator, current editor of the podcast, and I'm gonna shout out. I'm gonna shout out the thing commonly known as pollen today for making me sneeze 23 times in 2 minutes. That was pretty great.
You counted?
I did. My head hurt so bad. I was driving in the car with my girlfriend, and we were looking at some cows, and we had the windows down. I was like, "Oh no, I'm not gonna be able to drive." And I sat there and sneezed 23 times until my head was ready to split open. Like my eyes hurt. So yeah, that's cool. Allergies are fire. Shout out all the time.
Yeah, I've been there. That's the thing that sucks. I know exactly how that feels. I don't know about 23 times. That's like
Excessive.
that's kind of scary, man.
It got to the point where we were both just laughing, and I was like half laugh crying because I'm like, my whole body hurts now, and I can't stop.
You hope after sneeze like 7, your sinuses just give up and cave in and don't like.
Dude, I was
keep
about
going.
ready. I was like, just throw me with the cows. Maybe it'll help.
It's funny because like, isn't like a sneeze like, it's like low-key a little heart attack? So you probably had like, you had enough sneezes to like equal probably like half of a heart attack.
Big heart attack energy.
Oh yeah.
Oh god.
My God.
Y'all thought it was gonna be the anxiety that got me. Now it was the sneezes.
Well, Matt, I'm sorry that Mother Nature has betrayed you, but luckily we have other things that we can talk about that hopefully won't make you sneeze. So
We're gonna find out.
like as so this week we want to like take a like closer look at like music videos. That's something that we've all completely like as a team have talked about extensively, and how a lot of music videos in the past recent years have been getting a little bit more creative / experimental with the cinematography used, specifically with a lot of the use of the 4:3 aspect ratio. One video that I've loved specifically is by the artist MorMor from Toronto, Canada. He has like a selection of music videos that are like, I think exclusively 4:3. But one that I saw recently that I love is the song Someplace Else from his EP from last year it came out. I think with the same title, Someplace Else. Excuse me.
I'm holding on to something else. Is there some place? Is there some place else? Is there some place? Is there
The way it starts is very, I wouldn't say creepy, but it's like kind of eerie in a way. Like it starts with that like type of like, I think it's like a crane shot or something, but it's just black and white already setting up. It's like already kind of has this mood to it that's like a little bit different than normal, and it's like really slow. The camera moves really slow. It's very like deliberate. But I think the utilization of the 4:3 aspect ratio kind of makes it, I don't know. I've noticed that when it comes to this aspect ratio in music videos, I think directors use it to as a callback to a lot of films from like, I wouldn't say the golden age, but like a certain era. Like, because when I look at MorMor's video, I think of like German expressionist films for some reason. Granted, it's not that abstract, but at the same time, I feel like there is a linkage to that. Like that boxy, that boxy format. You know, it's very contained, and we're looking at like we're very like focused on what we see in the frame. We're not thinking of things outside of it. All that we need to pay attention to is directly in front of us. You know.
I also think, especially, I don't know, I think it was about like 20 or so seconds in, when you see him lying on the ground, you have that shot that zooms out from far above. I think those first 20 seconds kind of ending in that climactic scene before the music video continues it just reminds me so incredibly of like so many different film noir shots and things like that. Incredibly stark, very sparsely lit. And even the character kind of fills up a really small space in the frame, even though that is, I mean, the pinpoint of focus in the video. And for me personally, that always, I don't know, pulls me in a ton as a viewer. And anytime I see that in any sort of video, I love it when it's executed like that, and especially with the trail of blood that is like rising from his head. That entire shot is just so stark and a little bit menacing. I think it sets up the rest of the video incredibly well.
I was gonna say that the 4:3 aspect ratio really like works really well in this black and white video as well, because most people's screens aren't gonna have like screening like a theater would to like highlight that is the format. So you kind of have this like relationship between the borders that are completely flat black with the kind of character of like how black the actual shot gets. So you're able to see like the difference between the actual tone of the film or like the digital media that may be used.
Yeah, and I noticed with this music video that like I didn't notice. Matt actually brought it up. I didn't think of like the film noirish feel, but I can see that here. And it, I don't know, like I've when I think of like people like contemporary directors and artists using 4:3, I think about like what the, Robert Eggers, the director of Lighthouse, was talking about with why he chose 4:3. I think it's 4:3 with Lighthouse. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, and like how it was in a way like used so that we are focused on like, because it kind of mirrors what you see play out in the film. Like, you know, Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe are like not marooned, but like they are like stationary in this lighthouse. Not necessarily in the lighthouse, but you know, in this like island with the lighthouse and like the little house next to it, and that's all you get from the film pretty much. And it's like there's no like filler. It's just like it's what you see is what you get, even though like that is always not obstructed, constructed by the director. Like what you see, what you get can always takes form in different ways. Like they can manipulate that in many ways, and I think in a way you get that here with MorMor when like I'm not gonna like I don't think you can spoil a music video. Like I don't know if there's spoiler alerts for music videos. Most like you can just watch it, you know. But there is a narrative going on. It's not completely clear, but there's one going on. And when MorMor, like he's actually in the video, when he gets up from the ground, he starts to walk and it's really slow, and then the camera finally gets a little close to him, and you notice that like something happened to his eye. He has like a scar. So of course, you know, before like anyone watches this, like trigger warning, there's like some kind of body horror-esque stuff in there, some blood. But yeah, like he has like kind of an eye like missing in a way, and you know, like then we're completely focused on that given the aspect ratio. Had it been wider or something, I feel like it would kind of get missed. It may like have been like part of it, but we would have probably like, you know, not have noticed it in as great detail as we do with this tighter aspect ratio.
See, the thing I always was curious about, I guess, as I've watched that with that whole eyepiece, is actually I screenshotted it and zoomed in, and it looks like it's almost like skin has healed over it. And so I could be completely off of this take, but I'm curious if it's almost him watching himself on the ground as he gets taken away by the paramedics, and when he's walking around with that eyepiece covering, that's like, I guess, him having almost an out-of-body experience watching that play out in front of him, for lack of a better way to put that. Because it feels like some level of healing has happened. Healing is an awfully probably poor term to describe that. But I don't know, for me at least, it indicated some passing of time to a certain extent.
I think like the content of the song and like the mood of it fits really well with this type of like the kind of eeriness that it opens on that Tracy was kind of discussing. The actual narrative of the video is very compelling to me, and like to highlight like what you were saying, Matt, with the like out of body experience type thing, it almost makes me feel as if like it may not necessarily be an out of body experience, like it could be that, but like the direction that the video goes in, it kind of ends on this low note that I feel as if he may have already passed away, and he's kind of watching himself like as he's leaving, because as he like follows himself on this bike and like follows in the shadow of the ambulance, he like watches this play out, and he doesn't necessarily follow his body into the hospital. He stays outside of it. So I feel like that kind of signifies like he is no longer here.
Well, that, and also the last shot is him looking up at the streetlight. And you know that kind of trope when someone's dying, they kind of look up and their vision becomes hazy or their head moves back and forth a little bit. You have that shot almost exactly mirrored. He looks at the streetlight, it goes slight and out of focus, and you have that slight movement before it fades to black in the end of the video. So I don't know, I think that fits really nicely. I really like that point that you made.
It's interesting because that reminds me of, in a way, which I'm not sure, don't know this director or MorMor himself, but like given the context of the 4:3 aspect ratio and the black and white and this concept of death and an afterlife and the context of the song even being titled Someplace Else, it reminds me a lot of The Seventh Seal and Wings of Desire by Wim Wenders, where like it's this conversation about afterlife, and because I know Wings of Desire follows two angels observing like the world around them, and I think that's kind of, I don't know, I feel like in a way that's somehow connected. I'm not completely sure, but the wheels are low-key turning right now.
The other thing I guess I kind of noticed is that whenever you see him get up and walk around, I don't know if they did this in post or something like that, but the lights are flashing, like almost pulsing really gently in the background, which also kind of gives it almost an unearthly feel. Unearthly, not so much as in this isn't planet Earth, but more as in he is in a completely different realm, and take that as you will. But I don't know. I think that whole ambiance behind it really helps kind of push that. You can really see it clearly when there's a shadow of him biking on the ground and everything is just pulsing really gently in the background.
I think to like jump back to what Tracy was saying with like these connections to like full-length film in general, I feel like music videos as a whole, with their like shorter format, are able to have this dialogue with video art and like filmmaking that's separate from them, but they're able to like create narratives and stories that feel more emotive because they have such a shorter amount of time that they're associated with. So they're able to meditate kind of about these like greater ideas, such as like MorMor with Afterlife. But I feel like one of the other music videos we chose for this, which is James Blake, Can't Believe the Way We Flow, it's significantly like less connected to like narrative filmmaking, but is significantly more connected to video art as a whole, and even that format uses a lot of 4:3. But that video kind of like encapsulates this feeling of like not necessarily like affection, but just relationships and kind of like the relationships that bodies have to one another overall. But there is like a really strong like not even necessarily like romantic tint to it. It's very like visceral and very emotive, and like the way it uses like, for lack of a better word, like kind of grossly like fluids to like denote this connection throughout the entirety of it, that I thought was like kind of compelling with like how music videos as a format can like engage within the 4:3 aspect ratio, like so many different I guess modes of storytelling, like whether it be a narrative, experimental filmmaking, or even just like video art that's not specifically like a narrative.
I think the first like few seconds of this video remind me like a ton of some of the first like Sergei Eisenstein pieces I watched of like original montage and pieces like that, because all that was in 4:3 as well, and you have these like same moments.
Bangers.
same moments, especially when you see the people kissing, where you get
Ooh.
these little clips of other people like slipped in there, which kind of
Ooh.
deviate away from that initial storyline, but also remind me of how he would slip in other pieces to kind of, I don't know, almost distract the audience before he pulled them back in with those like continuously flashing images. And so I thought that was really, really effective and really, really beautifully done, especially under that kind of red glow and tint in the music video. I found that really, really compelling.
And Matt came through with the film history 1 lesson on y'all. You know the vibes, because I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, that's I see that. I've seen it too. I see it too with the experimentation of the video and the use of the editing being related to Vertov's Man with the movie camera. Which is another deep film nerd cut. Shout out to all y'all that identify as that. But yeah, like it's the use because the editing of this music video is very like tied to the music and it's and the words. I've noticed like it I think alone, like if we just followed, because to basically give a brief like summary of this music video, it shows many vignettes of different relationships and not all romantic, and the I don't know, I wouldn't even say intimate, but like just all the moments that like come with relationships, it being heated or loving. It's primarily loving, but there's some moments that are just in between. So I would say like if this music video just followed one of those vignettes, it wouldn't be as impactful as it would be with the use of the editing, where it's cutting like all of them all together to give us different feels at the same time. And the classic like cool show effect of like putting two images together creates a meaning. So like I feel like that's where they implemented that very well in this one, because there's so many different clips and so many different like ways relationships go that are shown in this, and it kind of adds to like the weight of this song and James Blake's like emotional ass voice that we're all like accustomed to by now.
I feel like also watching this video for the first time during quarantine really hit a lot harder, because it's definitely not all centered around physical aspects of relationships between people, but just that connection of interacting with someone in general, which has become a lot more detached in times where things need to stay remote. Like as we're recording this, we're all on a Google Hangouts chat with each other and seeing each other talk, but like as much as like the beautiful editing of sounding like we're all in a room together, we're not, and you can't really get that total feeling that we would in like a box office shift. So being able to see, like, I kind of glazed over for a minute while watching it and had that like where your eyes kind of are no longer seeing but still seeing the stream of like people moving towards each other to kiss or to hold hands, in the way that they splice the images throughout it. It's still very fluid in the way it moves, even though it's kind of like, I would say, jumpy compared to a lot of things. Like it moves really quickly, which I was like, ooh, kind of overwhelmed, but still feels very like concise in what it's saying, even though it's so broad in like the relationships and connections that it's covering.
Yeah, I agree with that, like, wholeheartedly. I feel like another aspect that you're kind of like keying in with like this, like the distance of it, it can kind of be kind of overwhelming to see these images in a lot of ways. Like the editing in one way is kind of overwhelming with like how it's spliced together, but like when Matt was talking about montage, the only thing I could like think about is that they're also like interspliced in some of the moments. There's like actual animation, and in those moments, whenever they're splicing together, like pulling animation from like these scenes. Because as I like have watched this like on maybe like my fourth or fifth, I realized like at one point some of the film footage, like kind of you can see down that the person, one of the cast members, is also the person who did the hand-drawn animation for it. So there's cool. Like another layer of like a relationship between like the creative processes of this like montaging and this like animation of different faces coming together with having like an actual animated like non like film process interspliced into it. So there's a lot of dialogue between like just relationships, and kind of like it gets to this very human nature, I guess, of just like not just connection but also like making in a way, like, and building in general. Like Lincoln build together in the same room. But 100. We had to do it to him real quick. But yeah, that's something I keyed into as well.
I'm curious what you guys think about the color palette throughout the video, because it changes a lot depending on where you are. Because you have kind of, I mentioned, those really intense, like deep reds. But at the same time, you have these moments of like really beautiful pastel imagery where like the saturation stuff have been like manipulated or muted to a certain extent. And so you have this like back and forth, which I always thought was pretty interesting in the video. So I'm just curious what you guys think about, I guess, that imagery.
I was gonna say like that. I feel like in like a basic level, I mean, the intense reds kind of like, I think for a lot of people that like is symbolized by love in a way. At least towards the end when the video ends and it's just like everyone's faces, like spliced together like incredibly fast in like the same profile, or in the end which to Maddie's point about like seeing people while in quarantine, seeing people be kind of intimate in different ways hurts a little bit, is when like they come together and hold hands. I was like, I miss that.
Yeah.
I miss holding hands. I hate seeing people hug on media. It makes me mad. but yeah, like I think the use of the red was most likely, I'm pretty sure, deliberate to like give that like kind of warm feeling. But the thing about that is, when it comes to like the warm feeling in the color palette, I feel like that's also a deliberate choice when it comes to the medium you're using to make the video. And when you and from what I don't know like all the information on this music video, but from what it looks like and from what I know, off of like formats, I believe it was shot on Super 16 or just 16 in general, and shooting on film, especially shooting music videos on film, is not wild, but it's like it's an artistic choice. It's like you have to really know what you're trying to do, because you can't go back from that. And with shooting with film, you get those like a deeper, kind of richer, even fuzzier color, and even the pastels look fuzzy in a way. And I think that's kind of what came into that, and it would make sense given the fact that the music video is in 4:3, that it was shot on 16. Or vice versa, that it was shot on 16. That's why it's 4:3. But yeah, I feel like using that, even back to like Mac's point about the like talking about like the intimacy of making. I think that really is attached to the idea of analog filmmaking too, or just analog art making, where it's like it's stuff that you have to be very tactile, especially with like animation. You have to be very tactile on that. Very hands-on, and I think that kind of helps for me at least, it helps the music videos, I wouldn't say overlying message, but like the intent, or it's like a warm type of feeling that is, even the long, like very long list of like who worked on it was nice to see, where it's like this was a music video about bringing people together that was brought to by a bunch of people. And it like it kind of like mirrors that what like we actually see on the screen. And like even with like given the talks about like using 16 and everything, I also noticed that in like a different video that we wanted to bring up, and that was Blood Orange and Tai Shi's Hope. Blood Orange, Tai Shi, and the infamous Puff Daddy.
Is this the way that
Yeah, bring hope when you come around. Yeah, I still smile when you come around. Yeah, bring hope when you come around. Yeah, I still smile when you come around. Yeah, bring hope when you come around. Yeah, I still smile when you come around. Yeah, I bring hope. What? I bring hope. Yeah, I bring hope. Yeah, I bring hope. Yeah, bring hope when you come around.
Sean Diddy Combs,
Puff Daddy. Whenever we get a chance to talk about like celebrity cameos in music videos, we gotta talk about when Ben Stiller is in one of Diddy's videos, and he just like he just botches his name for like 5 minutes.
Hey, how you doing? Puffy or Diddy Papa Diddy Pop? I'm sorry, I don't know what you're calling yourself these days, but Mr. Daddy.
I remember that as a kid, because that was back when like when music videos had like mad art part, actor cameos. But anyway, yeah, Blood Orange, Tai Shi, Puff Daddy, Diddy, Combs, Hope is another film that other music video that utilizes the 4:3 aspect ratio, and I feel like this video is one that mixes Super 16 with like, you know, digital photography, but I'm not entirely sure. From what it looks like it's both, but it could just be one, to be honest, because some of the clips are like very clean compared to like the ones that are like obviously on film with the there's scenes in like a studio with Blood Orange, Diddy, and Tai Shi that like are, you can tell that's like shot on 16. And it also, like, this video I think as well emanates a certain type of warmth that is a little bit different than James Blake's video. Like James Blake's music video, was, I think the core tenet of the song and the video was love, but like in a sense, like I think romantic love was privileged in it, but there was other instances of love shown in it. When it comes to like Blood Orange's video, I think it's like just a love for the people around you, not in general just love. I mean romantic love, because I feel like there's a lot of platonic love in this music video. There's a lot of familial love in this music video, and I would say self-love too. And I don't know if that's like incredibly like a huge reach, but like I think of the scenes. There's scenes where the model Alton Mason is like dancing by himself, like with this big red background that is just like gorgeous. And I feel like that, I don't know, that I got self-love from that mainly because it just seems very therapeutic just to just dance like that, freely and openly.
I think in addition to that, like the self-love portion of that, I really like that scene because of like the mirror on the ground is really compelling, because he's never really looking down at himself in the mirror, but whenever he's adjusting his hair, he's looking directly at the camera. So there's like this weird like dialogue of like where is the actual reflection, and I don't know, there's like a lot of like, I think, connection to like hair and hair care in the Black community, especially like in general. Tracy and I both know this, but like he's like making sure his hair is like looks how he wants it to, and that's like I think a really like big and like vibe in this whole video is like how people are portraying themselves throughout the entirety of this video. And I feel like another thing with like the quality of like the film, like in the night shots, they're not like being lit with studio lights, so you get like higher grain, and I think that's another like point where I'm able to like actually tell like what this is filmed on, because you're getting that like high grain, but like you're not getting like noise, you're just unable to see as clearly because of how dark it is. Just like an aside, but yeah.
You're talking about the part with like, well, one of the parts I feel like you're talking about is the one with A$AP Rocky.
I love how many cameos are in this, because A$AP, Tyler, Empress of? Am I right?
Yeah, Empress of Queen. Album came out not too long ago. This isn't like she ain't pay me to say this, I'm just saying.
We're so big that we got plugs for huge records now on this podcast.
Imagine.
I was gonna say, I feel like between this one and the like Blood Orange versus James Blake, I also feel like with the Reds, like there's the scenes with like the background that's kind of like a fire backdrop, and the model, like a lot of that is to draw your eye into, it feels like, where with the James Blake it felt a lot more like look away versus like drawing your attention, because it was splitting so quickly between scenes, like it's not meant to draw focus with the lighting, or at least that's what I got with it, where I felt like the Reds here were really stark and like attention grabbing versus just trying to mute something.
I feel that, yeah. It's like I feel like this video is also really interesting because it, in a way, it's connected to James Blake's video in the fact that it's filled with like different types of like just tableaus. Like there's different things going on throughout the music video. I'm so used to saying film, where it doesn't correlate with the rest of the things. Like it's just isolated incidents, which, you know, in music videos there's a lot of that. But when they're like, you know, finally art directed, which I think this one is, Blood Orange, Devontae Hines himself directed this music video. And it was produced by Elara Pictures, which is the production company headed by the Safdie brothers, which I think is interesting because they have an affinity for a like a 70s, early 80s look in their own movies. So I think it's interesting that it comes up in this music video as well. Everything's a circle. But the music video starts with one of my favorite shots in it with just a bunch of black dudes just running. Well, no, it doesn't start that way. I'm sorry. It starts with like an argument. But like one of my favorite shots in it starts with like just a bunch of black dudes running down a hill and like all in like not necessarily matching, but like in similar outfits with like, you know, tank top, blue jeans, and in a way like frolicking, which I think is just fantastic. I know that Blood Orange, like a lot of his visual output is he centers the idea or like the reality of a fragility in black men, not fragility, rather a sense vulnerability. Yeah, there we go. That's what I was thinking of. Like a vulnerability in black men, and I know this is like on par for his like visual output, and it's just like, especially given the fact that it's in 4:3, it makes it look so more compelling to me for some reason. I don't know why. Like I don't know if like if it was in like a 16:9 or like widescreen, would it look? I don't think it would look any better, to be honest. And I can't really pinpoint that down.
Well, I feel like you have less to look at when it's in 4:3. Like, you
Right.
don't have that full screen. Even if you're making it take up your whole desktop as you're watching it, it's still a very precise shot. Like, you have... your eye is on everything that is being shot because it's so small visually. Like, you don't have to take in as much of the details of the background because there isn't as much background to take in. Like...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think 4:3 always feels much more intimate than any other aspect ratio, just by virtue of it.
Yeah, I think like I don't know if I like touched on this already, but I feel like music video directors and artists, when like they like do consulting and stuff like that, I think they move towards 4:3 because I think it in a way it like garners this like type of reaction from the people that watch it, where like they're more intentively watching it because the frame is so small, and it's like there really isn't much like there's not a lot of, like Maddie was saying, like visual noise in the background to where we like get lost or distracted. Like we are kind of we're into what we see at the moment. And I think that's kind of when music videos like tend to take like a cinematic bent, they usually go with widescreen, I've noticed, but like some artists go with the 4:3 to give like a little bit more attention, I've noticed.
Yeah, I think this was a great discussion on 4:3. I think like one thing to like leave off on before we move on to the next segment in regards to music videos is like we had discussed before that didn't make it into the pod like explicitly, but just like how 4:3 as a format is used in music videos because that's what was accessible even in the past. Mm-hmm. So when you're dealing with like music videos as a whole, there's very few like extremely large productions in the past, and especially like the notes that I feel like these artists are like connecting back to are probably like when they were more likely to be like being affected by art like as like younger people, as opposed to like looking at it as like the aesthetic qualities, like what they want to pull from it to put in their art, just more like as they were growing up, like because how 4:3 was the standard like television size for a long time, mm-hmm. like how Tracy had brought up earlier, like all those music videos like 2000 like probably like 1998 until like 2007, there really isn't like an ability to make a music video not 4:3, right? Unless you had like a much larger film budget. Like the only person I could think of that maybe has something not in 4:3 that like far back is Thriller, like 16:9:35, because that's such a large production. But I even feel like that's 4:3.
That's a good question. I was thinking too, like with like Diddy's music videos and how like they were incredibly cinematic in the 90s, and if they were in 4:3 because he had to like encompass so many. Like I remember during like doing my research before this podcast, I read something about how California Love by Tupac Dre was only in 4:3 on TV, but like it was like shot like in like widescreen because like it had like a huge budget, and I think because of like TVs in the 90s, a standard television size and aspect ratio that TVs can like deal with, it was in that 4:3, but it was apparently wider. which is insane to think about. That it was like low key on par, probably not. No one fact checked me though. Like probably on par with like Lawrence of Arabia or something. I know that the music video in general, and this wasn't one of them that we're listing. I just wanted to bring it up. Was inspired by, I think, Mad Max.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because like if you watch it, like it's this like weird post-apocalyptic time where there's like these weird mecha cars, and like they're in this like this Thunderdome thing. Like,
welcome to another edition of Thunderdome.
When I watched that music video as a kid, I just thought it was cool. But like as I got older and done my like film like history studies and stuff like that, I was like, oh wait, they were talking about Mad Max. Like that was a Mad Max like callback. Because like after watching the new one or the newest one by George Miller and like even looking at his older ones, it makes a lot of sense. But like it's interesting though, Mac, that you bring up like production, because like that's like things that we don't really talk about enough with like music videos and just films too. It's just like how things are made and the economics behind it. And it's more interesting too when artists and like directors or whatever themselves can actively critique the economics of it all, or just economics in general, or in the case of like a lot of American slash like Western artists, like capitalism. And how that relationship affects the actual output.
Yeah, we had some honorable mentions also, not to like derail what you're going with capitalism, because that definitely segues into like our second topic of the day. But we had also looked at like Hand in Hand and Kendrick Lamar, and I feel like what you were saying with like production value is really not the word salient, but maybe poignant in that way, because like these music videos are interacting. Like Hand in Hand is kind of the advertising campaign for Yves Tumor's album before the most recent one they put out. But all of those are kind of like more abstract in the way they're dealing with things, and they deal with like the 4/3 and 16/9 split in this way that allows you to like see these like small clips as being artfully done. But like when you think about the economics of them, they're definitely not made very expensively, because like a lot of it's really like heavily practical effects, lots of heavy makeup, and like creating this narrative, and the manipulation between 4/3 and like expanding through it is kind of like the polar opposite of what Kendrick is doing in King Kunta for the kind of like using an aspect ratio, because King Kunta uses a 1-to-1 ratio, which like kind of gives this illusion of 4/3, but is more suited for like how we deal with things digitally now, like within like a phone screen. Because I think the first time I watched the King Kunta music video was on Twitter, and like having that like perfect square like in the format that Twitter uses to display videos in the mobile app, like you have the full video right there and you can see it whether or not you open the video to begin with. And even Instagram uses a 1-to-1 ratio, so any like advertising or clips being placed into that, I feel like the economics of that, because Kendrick definitely is a bigger artist and would have higher budgets than someone like Yves Tumor, but there's still a lot of like, not shortcuts, but a lot of thought put into like how can you cut these things into to make it more economically like viable also for like advertising music or advertising an album is out. Because not only do music videos operate as like their own piece of art, but also operate as this tool to sell music, more or less, to keep like songs on the charts, or to bring other songs up to charts, or try to give people more information about the product that's being sold as music. And like this is like an aside, but Resident Weeb, like anime is only made to sell manga, like it's to sell the physical books. That's the main reason why anime is made, which is why I don't gravitate super highly to things that are adaptations. I'm more interested in animation as a whole, so I usually gravitate towards anime that is made to be a video, like made to be a show, or made to be a miniseries, because there's more care put into like they're not adapting or like trying to translate like a different experience into video, like a video medium. They're like making a video medium like to start. But I remember that Maddie had something to say in regards to one of our other honorable mentions, which is Peach Pit, and then take us into our next topic.
Just a quick break in the segment to let you all know that here at Fifth Ave, we have access to Peggy Ahwesh's Strange Weather, a short that we had programmed for spring term, but we are lucky enough to have garnered a digital copy that we will be streaming at an upcoming date via the internet for everyone during this time of quarantine. So please keep your eyes on our social media for more updates about when that will be, and we hope to see you all there. Now back to the podcast.
Yeah, so I'm not one of the film majors on staff, and I wanted to make sure I knew what 4-3 was, because, you know, movies. And Peach Pit was the only, like, Peach Pit 17 was the only movie ratio I could think of with Mr. Peach Pit. I don't know the band name members' names, but he's just dancing in a bunch of different locations as you are to do as a gangly white man, and just vibing with headphones on, and like it doesn't matter where he is, it carries throughout that it's just him dancing, like that's it, he's in his own zone. I think there are a couple people throughout it like in the background of where they shot, but just in general he is in places consuming things, and it's really funny because nothing's like promoted with like the movie store he walks through or the mall or like what you know as a 7-Eleven, because there's the fucking Slurpee machine right there. But in the second topic that we wanted to bring up with music videos, we wanted to talk about consumerism and all these people that kind of made fun of like the aesthetics that go into like infomercials, like, you know, you're in a hotel at 2 a.m, the only thing that's on is George Lopez and infomercials. So like kind of that kicking it off with Rina Sawayama's new video, XS, which you should go listen to her album Sawayama. It's fucking good.
I'm the baddest and I'm worth it. Give me just a little bit on me, on my, I don't wanna hear only one on me, on my. Give me just a little bit on me, on my. Give me just a little bit, little bit. Give me just a little bit, on me, on my. I don't wanna hear only one on me, on my. Give me just a little bit on me, on my. Give me just a little bit, little bit.
But in this video, it's kind of I would say like directly parroting infomercials with like that setup of the product that they are displaying, and her kind of being this piece of like not a mouthpiece, but just very much so only there to sell the product, because as you see throughout the video, when shit hits the fan, to eloquently put it, they don't really care, and they just kind of keep going because they gotta sling the shit.
It's because she's the product to sell the product.
There's layers. Before we like dive into like maybe like the deeper meaning of the video, I just want to go in and just say like XS is a bop. Like the whole song, I just want to keep listening to it over and over. The hook is so deeply infectious that I just want to like listen to the song forever. And I feel like the like earworminess, catchiness of the song is very, very it makes the music video stronger solely because like it's like a very apt way to like get you to keep watching it, like in one way, but also like it is not, I don't want to call it lowest common denominator, because pop music is usually associated with that, but this is just like really good music, and like being able to make a song this catchy is a really like huge feat as like a songwriter in general. And like just knowing like being a like an artist of her size at this point, like she isn't necessarily like having a lot of writers help her with this. Like this is kind of like on her own merits of being able to like make these connections from like how she's portraying like these sonics and how they're being presented as like a product in the music video, but then doing a deeper layer of making a commentary on products as a whole.
Yeah, I know from watching her videos that she does of herself on YouTube, like now especially with the quarantine, like the everybody has a podcast now. I wonder what that's like.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Fifth Avenue podcast.
But she comments on the fact that she hopes that people like actually listen and like read the words, like just take a minute to like, without listening to the song, just read her lyrics, because she feels like a lot of the time songs that have that magnitude and like magnetism of like these are earworms, they're catchy, don't necessarily have that deep of a lyrical meaning. Like I know I can personally rip on myself a little for how much I listened to After Hours, and I went, ooh, this is all just toxic masculinity, but it's really fucking catchy. So going to this and being like, fuck capitalism, Tesla, Lexus, like all this shit, and her being like, you know, it's like celebrities watching Parasite and going, it's my favorite movie of the year, and she's like, did you watch it? Did you get the meaning? Like,
that's you. You're the bad one.
You the
it's
parasite.
You.
Parasite.
Bro, it's you.
Wait a minute though. Wait a minute. Maybe the parasite is the friends we made along the way.
Oh my god.
No.
Every week, baby. Every
That was
week.
the worst one.
Every week I'm back.
Every week.
I will find a way to say that every week.
And you know what that means, Tracy? I'm gonna end the podcast with that every week.
Let's get it.
Oh my god.
I think with like the not reading or like not listening to the lyrics with music like this, that's and I have the opposite problem because I grew up listening exclusively to rap because that's what my dad listened to. So lyrics mean like that's all I care about. So like it was really hard for me to like get into music that were significantly like heavier on like the like actually like instrumental or like the actual like musicality of instruments, because I was like, what is this song about? There's no words. Tell me what the song is about. And like I feel like I listen to like this wave of pop like in the PC music scene and like the PC like everyone that's adjacent to them, like I'm always listening to lyrics so heavily, so like it doesn't, not to say like I'm better than people, but like those like things don't sneak past me, I guess, or like I don't listen to something catchy and go, oh, I just want to listen to this forever. It's like I want to listen to it not only because it's catchy, but like the stories that they're telling or like the way they're able to portray this is like so effective that it just impresses me that you're able to like create all this like depth with like the like with just minimal words.
Yeah.
And focusing on how you're saying it and how you're delivering it as opposed to how wordy you can get with it.
And making it catchy.
Like, making it catchy definitely helps, but I think it's funny watching her talk about openly being pansexual and going, I don't think I've ever written a song about a man. I don't know how you didn't all pick up on it earlier. And I'm just like, people didn't hear, like, we're playing the pronoun game. She's only saying she, and they're like, must be a feminine dude. I don't know. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, if you listen to the words whatsoever, not just the melody, you're going to get some inkling of who the artist is as a person, and she definitely, like, is constantly thinking about that, and it really shows in the music that she puts out, where it's like, Sawayama, like, 1st to 12th track is just bops, like, in a lot of different ways, but it, like, continuously the words are a lot more than just a hook, like, in every single song, so it's something where it's like, Chosen Family, I know is one, like, personally that hits really hard. And I know she's planning on like coming out with more music videos, and like I fingers crossed hope that's one of them, but like in this video it's just very much so, it's nice to see like that mirroring of what the like quote unquote deeper meaning is, where it's not that deep, you just have to know how to read, and I feel like you probably know how to read if you're listening to this podcast, so here's to hoping.
To like direct us back into, I guess, like the visual aspects of the video, to give like a quick breakdown of the video kind of follows unbeknownst to you in the beginning kind of like this kind of cyborg kind of like robot that kind of is a double commentary of like people who do sell things and like the fakeness associated with them in this like infomercial way, that's trying to sell this like product that's a drink that was just like going to make your life better and make you visibly more attractive. It's made of gold and plasma, and I feel like there's a lot of things going on in this video that can be like not difficult to pick up on, but there's a lot of visual information. I feel like in the 16:9 format, even as we're talking about like 4:3 being a format that like focuses you in, this definitely has a lot of visual noise on the outskirts of it that is only possible in this format. So this also heightens like a different, like approaching it a completely different way. And then throughout this video, towards the end, it starts to reveal the layers of production of the product, and people who are making it have like visceral responses to it. Like, although it's like being advertised as this glossy thing, like it itself comes from a very dark place, and like it is like in one of the scenes, one of the employees helping package it like smells it and like has a disgusted reaction to the scent of it, which before it like gets into like where it actually comes from gives a hint to that.
They have that same at the end of the music video where when she's lying on the trash pile and the elderly couple's walking by and the guy like takes the last swig, and right before he throws it on the pile where she is, he also has that same kind of disgusted or unsatisfied expression at the end.
I feel like with this music video, like along with the like criticism of capitalism, even though I feel like you can't fully, because I'm gonna get into like how there is. Actually, let me start that over again. Said this mumbled words ain't coming to you, boy. I feel like at the same time with the criticism of capitalism in this music video, she's also engaging in a critique, or not even a critique, but just like a denouncement of like, I wouldn't say tokenism, but I would think like it's like in a racism that is embedded in capitalism, and I think you can't talk about capitalism without talking about the racism that is like inherently in it, because I realized that in the music video, like I feel like her cyborg type persona or whatever is almost like a stand-in for like, you know, using like a person of color or as to sell them, and you know, making and at the same time they're like easily disposable, as in like, you know, at the end when she gets thrown away. And I feel like that became really poignant or like clear to me was when there's like the dance break part where she's with like two other women that are kind of dressed like her, but they're not her, and they kind of like getting like, not like a spat, but they get kind of like a little like tussle, and then they pour the Rina juice all over it, and she like kind of malfunctions. But I think it's interesting because it's like they're like modeling her after her, and I don't know the specific ethnic backgrounds of the two people that were her backup dancers, but I'm like, they look white, and I was like, I feel like that was like message to me. But yeah, like I think that was like, she was also talking about that too, and to think about like the workers that were like smelling it and being disgusted with it. It's like kind of like that idea of wanting something from a culture and wanting it like and using it in a sense of consumerism, but at the same time not like, I don't know, being disgusted by it in a way where it's like, if it was, I don't know, I think about it in like in the realm of just how like people of color are usually like profited on, like their output. There we go. Their output is usually used, bottled up, the Rina juice, and then sold to people, but there's very little regard for them as people. And then they, oh wow, hold up, I think I just came up with something. This all happened in real time. I was like, then she's the robot. Damn.
Yeah, I mean, that consumerism of a culture that isn't yours and then having disgust towards it is like, it's not yours. Like, that's the whole thing of like when she talks about in the video where she's doing her own makeup and just kind of talking about the video and making it, she was like, oh, everyone that hates their hooded eyelids I just don't know where to stop. And she keeps like moving back, and she was like, so everyone who's trying to do this, you have to look like me, I'm sorry. Like, it was just kind of like that thing of like being like, don't try and emulate this, like this is not for you, this is me doing me right now.
Exactly.
I think when I first saw it, and especially the end scene where you see her, you know, kind of fully embrace that like robotic form, it reminded me of, unfortunately, because this episode was really bad, of the Ashley 2 Black Mirror episode, which,
oh god,
I feel like for anyone that saw it, it was pretty hot garbage. Like, it was real rough. But I think the messaging at the end is pretty similar. I guess for those who didn't see it, basically, Ashley is a pop star. She, I guess, she gets into a coma because she took too large a dose of her medication, and basically her studio just took a digital copy of her and pasted that up and produced music behind it, because the only important part was her image. Like, the actual person itself was pretty irrelevant to the actual musical production and popularity of her. And I don't know, it just seemed, I don't know, quite akin to that whole piece where the person behind all of it is quite irrelevant at the end of the day. It's purely the image and the ability to sell that image and exploit that image. And I don't know, it caught me as being a pretty similar take in two completely different forms. One, I will say, pretty poorly written, but nonetheless, very similar thematically.
That's the one with Miley Cyrus in it, huh?
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah,
two.
I specifically avoided that episode.
Yeah, I think that's why I was like, that doesn't ring a
Gucci.
bell.
See, I love Black Mirror, so I had to like get through all of season 5. It was a real sad ending, especially because I also thought Bandersnatch was pretty disappointing. But I don't know. The end of the episode was pretty decent. The rest, pretty rough.
And like to follow up like your idea of like exploitation, definitely that is seen in this video. I like wrote in the notes like this kind of like what is it called, the alienation of the worker from their labor, and I feel like that happens a lot like in the creative industries, and like this is kind of showing like the mechanical bird-like creature that's in the video, like that they're skimming off of like the product out of, like that creature is like locked in a dark basement and does not benefit from like what's being taken from them, doesn't benefit like even like physically or materially, like its living conditions are as a slave to this. And I feel like this video is able to like address capitalism at a lot of different scales in a lot of different industries, like solely in that scene, and the fact that it's made in music like as a whole.
Yeah, definitely.
I would
I
say
agree.
to move into the next video, Consumerism as Do a Good. Dorian and Electra, when they released the video, Guyliner also released a like limited edition eyeliner that is promoted throughout the video, not very subtly, and I mean that's the point of it, is to show like this is a product.
I'm a guy, don't be surprised if I take my time to glamorize. No reason why that I can't try to line my eyes. It feels so right. Guyliner, yeah, you know I'm wearing eyeliner, yeah, and everybody's staring. This is the women, baby, and this ain't no disguise.
I don't know. I know Machiavelli had some takes around the video not fitting the sound of the song or just being kind of harsh. But
Green's not the color. Green's not the vibe.
No, I would
Green's
agree.
not the vibe.
Hot take incoming.
It's like a purple song.
Hot take incoming.
The song's real purple. That's all I gotta say. Song's real purple and blue. Video's real green.
Yeah, I think it was just they dyed their hair green because like that was it. That was the only thing that changed in their demeanor to indicate why that video would be like disgustingly neon green.
I thought, like, I mean, and I'm someone that came into the video like only knowing who Dorian Electra is, and not ever listening to the music in my life. But I thought it was because the video in some ways is a callback to like the era of like pop punk videos.
Yeah,
and scene kids, because like even with the way of dress and the like hairstyling in that video, like I can see that, unless that's just how Dorian Electra just be, which I'm like, I respect that.
It's in between. It's honestly in between. But I will say, having been a kid that was actively a part of like the pop punk scene culture when I was a child, I was definitely, I think part of my like visceral like ooh like to this video was just like, it wasn't anything against it, it just felt uncomfortable and like it was touching a nerve where it's like, hey, you used to dress like that, and I'm like, stop, it's okay, I moved past that. We don't need to bring it up.
But the thing is about that though, it's not like a caricature of it though.
No,
it's just
it's
you
very
know, it's just like
authentic.
it just works with it.
Yeah,
'cause, like,
but it's sorry.
No, I was saying, like, 'cause some videos a lot like, you know, like to make caricatures of like past cultures instead of just doing them, you know, instead of like paying homage. Even I wouldn't even call this video paying homage to that. I think it was just part of the aesthetic.
Yeah, I don't think any of it was like an homage to that culture, because they genuinely were like, yeah, steampunk is the shit, and everyone's like, wait, really? And they're like, yeah, it's fucking cool. Like they're just like that. So I think that's also part of it.
It's just how they be.
It's just how they be.
Yeah, the steampunk part was a big. It was a bit. I was like, whoa! I didn't see that coming. Out of everything I've seen in that video, I was like, whoa, steampunk.
See, my main takeaway from the visuals of this video, which may not have been the point, but I was like, man, if Dorian Electra was Godzilla and that was my city, I'd been like, you can have it. This is the hottest goddamn Godzilla I've ever seen. This city is yours.
Matthew Carson, step on me.
Yours.
Please, Dorian Electra, please step on me.
Step on my city.
Oh God!
As an architect, you can have my building.
There's a lot of that into that I think is the title of the pod. There's like 3 different titles that just came up from that. It's like
Step on
hottest
me.
Godzilla. Step on me.
Step on me.
Oh God! I want to say
like
this
4
is
E's.
just. This doesn't have to be in the podcast, but the fact I was waiting for them to break something over their head because they do it in every single music video. I think someone showed them this is what Sugar Glass did, and they went, "Shit, I'm gonna use the hell out of that effect."
It's like, the moon.
Like it's just they just grab the moon, go yeah.
Dumb space rock. Bah.
Don't you ever just like want to grab the moon and smash it over your head?
Sometimes.
In
Only
COVID
when I'm
season,
wearing my
every
stompy
day.
boots.
I mean, like when the moonlight hits your eye,
Like a big pizza pie.
Exactly. And you want to put your face in it.
I would say like there is like an extreme level of authenticity with it, like y'all were saying, because like as you were saying, like that's just how it be. It's not like capitalizing or even doing a callback. I feel like Dorian Electra does a good job of like portraying these things in their music videos and in their music as a whole. It's very earnest.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like making fun of or ever like discrediting it. It's like acknowledging, or parodying it, exactly. Because they're like a very intelligent person and very well educated and like have made music in a mode and like an educational mode before, and like just reading into them and like as they went through school, like for a long time like made music and music videos alongside like class assignments to like portray these ideas that they're able to like. They kind of sit in this gray space for me, like knowing like their background of that, of like trying to figure out like how much of that is like shining in through these songs like very purposefully, like very intentionally. And I don't want to like, I think one thing that like can be like a big failure of like criticism or like reading into things is like maybe reading a little too far into the artist's intentions. Mm-hmm. But I feel like with them, like you can read into them, and then if you told them that, they're like, yeah, I was doing that, is like the biggest way. Because like a lot of like the Flamboyant album is like addressing femininity and masculinity and like the ideas of them, and like how, I don't know, I was reading also like we talk a lot about camp before too, and like I feel like there's a quote in Susan Sontag's Notes on Camp that I brought up in a class Matt and I have together, and there's like this quote that says like one of the qualities that's most attractive in a masculine person is something feminine, and something that's most attractive in a feminine person is something masculine. And I feel like them being gender fluid allows them to like address that so wholly with like how they like portray aesthetics or like bring in different, I would say just like portray aesthetics, because like they're all over the place aesthetically, but it's still cohesive because of how exaggerated it is.
Yeah, I will definitely say all the exaggeration feels very authentic to the point where it doesn't feel like exaggeration anymore. Like I can definitely remember, I think Man to Man was the first music video I saw by that, and I saw the rat tail and I was like, ooh, that was a choice, but I was like, oh, they're just rolling, like that was purposeful, they don't have a rat tail. Like I don't know, like little things like that where it's like the mustache that has become like synonymous with like that's their thing, was like, I know they've talked about it in videos where it's like it was a bit, it was a joke, like kind of making fun of like that androgyny with masculinity that AFAB people are able to hold in a safer space in a lot of like open fucking around with gender presentation things. Please cut me off if I'm getting way too into queer theory, because my degree is showing. My major path is showing.
Let it rip.
But like I definitely appreciate like knowing their background. I think something that I appreciate in all of their music videos is a lot of the time they're one of the few artists I can think of consistently giving trigger warnings and like epilepsy warnings. And that was the best way I could segue into the next music video, which was Sophie's Faceshopping, because I was not prepared whatsoever to watch that video. And when Mac brought it into the box office, I was like, what the fuck is this? My eyes hurt.
My face is the front of shop. My face is the real shop front. My shop is the face at front. I'm real shop my face.
when y'all go to this music video, we're letting you know right now, there's a lot of flashing lights and graphics and words and stuff. So, epilepsy warning. There's no warning. It just starts off from the rip. So, epilepsy warning is right now.
As
you
someone
can't
who
see it
has
right now.
absolutely no epilepsy, my head just hurt by the end of it. So,
And I think it adds to the song because the song is kind of intense.
oh yeah.
So it does make sense, but I think adding the song and the visuals, it can be like overwhelming. So yeah, just wanna throw that out there.
Yeah.
Song's fire though.
Oh yeah, it's a bop.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I feel like this song like is not even narrative and is way more experimental, but is still getting to like the excessiveness of commercialism and consumerism and capitalism and all those other isms. But one of the ones it doesn't address in here that we addressed in the Rina Sawayama one is racism. So that's an ism that isn't super present in this video. But like this whole video, like, and the lyrics with it, like, establishes like how like optics and aesthetics are what's like selling her image. And like throughout this whole video, just like the manipulation of aesthetics and like the optics of her face as it stands, and like the intercuts between like certain words and like certain imagery, like this high gloss gets to like this sense of perfection that's like really uncomfortable, and it creates this uncanny valley effect.
Definitely.
That like I feel like is something that like I would say like beauty in a way like historically has sold, is this uncanny valley like perfection effect. Mm-hmm. But I feel like as of late it hasn't as much, because the people who actively like buy cosmetics and like wear makeup have like pushed it a lot harder as to like what you can wear in public, as opposed to like instead of it being used as like a correctional tool, it's used as a tool for self-expression, or it's been more like obvious that it's being used in that way with how like extravagant it's been getting.
I also wanted to plug a quote she said about like choosing the name Sophie, like when it was just a moniker for like her stage name, was mm-hmm. It tastes good and it's like moisturizer. Like that was her speaking about herself. And I just really liked that plug kind of thing of like, it's for you. I feel like in the day and age that we live in, a lot of people are more comfortable experimenting with makeup because there isn't as much like societal pressure one way or another. Like I feel like that's definitely both good and bad, because it kind of like, I know I see a lot of people joking about like 12-year-olds looking better than I do at age 23. That's not allowed. And I'm like, that's the sexualization of children. But
thanks TikTok.
Yeah. So I mean, in that in this music video, the entire time I feel like the flashing imagery and the like very not grotesque, but like the way that a lot of the animation is done is very drastically different from like moving from each image.
But yo, to like quote someone on YouTube, since we didn't do a whack tweet of the pod, and this isn't whack, but I think it's hilarious. But like Jimmy Lopez said 2 years ago when this video came out, imagine showing this to someone from the 15th century. In a close second to that is Liv ! Point said, I watched this while high and she personally showed up at my door and strangled me. Thanks, Queen.
Okay, I have to say, on a personal note, stan culture makes me really like, it's wild that people just think they can say things to people like that. Because I know separately Dorian, Electra, and Sophie in interviews have talked about people going, spit on me, and they're like, what the fuck?
I know, it's so weird. At the same time, it's really funny.
It's really funny that people are that bold.
There's this really kind of eerie quote that I found about someone talking about that video, kind of getting back to the whole uncanny valley thing. And this guy described the video as Sophie owning a shop, and she was always at the front window with a mannequin shopping her face, picking out which one to wear. And I was like, oh my god, I don't like that at all. But I don't know, feels kind of accurate though at the same time.
Yeah, almost like a randomizing screen. I think of like Grand Theft Auto and hitting randomize, but just really fast. Like that's some of the effect it has when it's like pictures of her, or not pictures. Yeah. They're all like animations, but like it all feels very like some games where you can like physically change the physique. of your character that you're playing, like, but just make it drastically terrible. You're like, let me have the eyebrows as high as they can go, and they're off the forehead. Like,
which Skyrim character am I gonna be today?
Oh, I was just like in line with what Maddie was saying. I feel like there's a lot to say in this video. I feel like I mentioned optics, but like something me and Maddie talk a lot, like what you mentioned, like with the Guyliner video, just like the acceptability of like certain like gendered things, or like being able to like experiment with expression, etc. I feel like this video and kind of like the theme of it kind of gets to those ideas of transness as well, with like what is like palatable, or like the optics of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you like would want to speak more on that, because you definitely know way more theory than I do to be able to speak about it.
I feel like in looking at both Dorian, Electra, and SOPHIE as trans musicians, they both have a very like separate, like SOPHIE is a lot more reclusive than Dorian, Electra is. Dorian, Electra is fucking out there. They're just doing shit. Like recently their Twitter has just been like talking about social distancing and playing Minecraft, and they're just like, continue to social distance, but also like, I'm lonely, y'all. Like, it's just like, you know, like very out there and talking about their day like hour to hour, and SOPHIE's like, yeah, you can get me for an interview once a decade, don't interact with me otherwise. And I'm like,
yeah, I remember when like there was no images of SOPHIE.
Yeah,
like
no.
she was just like an entity.
And she talked on that. That's where that quote was from, when it was like, oh, we all assumed you were a guy, and she's like, nope, trans. And they're like, oh, okay, sorry if that was offensive. And she's like, nah, I'm just SOPHIE. That's it. Like, and it was just kind of like...
It's funny because her face and her music, I can't think of it on top of my head, but she was part of a fashion show, like, at least when that was able to happen before Rona, and her whole face was on like this big projector, and behind the runway, I think it was Louis Vuitton.
It was Louis Vuitton. Yeah, I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
It was like imagery from, I think, like this album too, I think, or just imagery that she made for it, and it was so wild that like it got to the point where it's like we're seeing SOPHIE like straight up, and she's in like a big like Italian house, like fashion houses like show. It's insane. And but the thing is that she still somehow, because I watched some of that show, she still somehow was able to get her like very distinct and like almost sometimes disturbing imagery in that show. Because I think that was a lot of people's like problems with that show, where it's like, oh, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, like something that Mac I think kind of touched on is I feel like there's also the double standard of, once you quote unquote choose to be trans, you have to fit into the boxes of what is palatable for people to see. And I know personally, like from what I've seen in like social media, which I don't know how individuals would feel talking about this, because I am someone who's white and AFAB and very like, I'm almost 2 years on hormones, so like I would say it more androgynous than I was at the beginning of that. But like, I know I've personally been able to fuck around with makeup and like post that and feel comfortable in doing that, while I know people, like especially people who are openly trans feminine, aren't like, it's all or nothing. You have to like openly choose. And I feel like that's really prevalent in the way that like with this video with SOPHIE, I wouldn't say she does a lot that's out there makeup wise. Like it's all pretty like standard, whatever you want to call standard, but not anything that's like dramatically drawing your eye. A lot of that is done visually with the animation, like, and the deflating of her face and like the distortion and having all these like graphic words cut in between with like those images. And like Dorian and Electra throughout the whole video has like a shit ton of eyeliner on in all these different funky shapes, and is like promoting their sale of the eyeliner and how they do that. So it's like, personally, I feel like there becomes this standard of, I think, and this is, I don't know if this is a hot take, this is an opinion, but I think that cis men get a lot more leeway with playing around in makeup and presentation in an online setting than trans feminine people do, because there becomes this standard of like, you need to fit the role of being, you want to be trans feminine, right? Like you are choosing that path for yourself, which is like, nah, bro, that if I could choose, I wouldn't, like personally, I would not choose to go through the shit that I go through with being trans if given a choice, but I didn't. So I don't know. I think people get pushed on a lot with like, you need to show that you're trying, and that can't be out there because then you're trying too hard, or I know a comment I hear a lot, which I don't think people mean intentionally meanly, but it's like, oh, I hate that drag queens can do their makeup better than me. And I'm like, that's the art form. That's the whole thing, is like the makeup. Like, that's the big ass part of it. And it's like, you can use, sorry, I'm going into tangent, but like the fact that you can switch between pronouns for someone while they're performing drag and out of drag, but not just respect someone's actual pronouns that they use every day for everything, is just fucking whack to me. I don't know. And I feel like AMAB people get a lot of the brunt on that more so than AFAB people do, because there's the standard with like being able to fuck around with openly being more masculine. Going back to Rina Sawayama, her song Conde de Garçon, I said that so terribly, Jesus Christ. Like the boys, except French? It's French, yeah? It's her talking about like that male confidence and how that's kind of not something that she's allowed to have, but she wants to and feels like she exudes, and is very much so like, here I am being confident, this is what the boys do, right? And just kind of like, that's a different aspect of playing around with it. But I feel like between SOPHIE, Dorian, Electra, and Rina Sawayama, like they all have different takes and interpretations on pushing the boundaries a little bit. And I think with SOPHIE, the way that she does it visually through animation and like the like drastic, all the flashing, oh my god, you're just like, I don't want to look at this anymore. And it's like, cool, stop. Like, she just kind of is very blunt and to the point while also being really out there.
I was gonna say, earlier you were talking about some of the fonts, and I've kind of had a good time over the past couple days, like pausing the video and doing side by side to fonts. And I think, and I could be off on these of course, but I'm 99% positive she uses the Nike font through most of the video. I overlaid them in Illustrator with opacity, and they're within like 99% of a match. Also, the Coca-Cola and Sprite fonts both show up. I also thought it was cool how she manages to put in just about every single advertising font cliche you can have, from the dissolving letters to like the really big, like in your face glowing, I don't know, kind of like very geometric and like spiky characters, to the like the bubble letters with the like light glow behind them, which is just every single cliche we see almost every day. And I just I don't know, I loved how kind of lightly done that was. It wasn't very in your face or anything like that, but that kind of like sprinkled messaging throughout, I think, was really, really neat.
Well, and like, I would definitely agree with that, but I think it's the opposite. It's like over exaggerated in your face to the point where you can't consume it. Like, I know I can't watch this video straight all the way through without looking away at least once, because it hurts my head way too much. So it's like,
totally,
it's very well done in that like consumerism aspects of, these are things you see every day. It's like the quiet advertisement, going back to the Subaru and lesbian stories, but like in the separate way of like having those fonts and things and products in the background, like just to casually, like, you're not openly saying that we're advertising this, but she is just like, what is my image to you, and this is how I come across, and this is how I'm consumed. And it's very dramatic and aggressive almost, where it's like, I don't know, if you can watch this video without genuinely coming away with a migraine, like, props.
Yeah, I guess like just one last piece with that is, and that's why when I've watched it, I pause it and I scrub through like it's a series of stills, or like almost like a PowerPoint presentation. And that's been a much more palatable way to view it that isn't so jarring, and kind of take a closer look at some of the imagery that's put in it. And that's been a really cool way to like view it side by side from that really jarring in your face, kind of slapping you from side to side visuals and flashing that the video has when it plays.
Yeah, and then like in line with like that idea of like palatability, I feel like in the way that like Matt, you're reading it, and how like Maddie has kind of explained it, like with like kind of Sophie's persona as an artist and like as a person not being in the public eye, like this, like she's like addressing like this not excessive need, but like this excessive desire to like in this genre like of pop in general, like the idea is that you're also selling the person, but through like almost exclusively like in these hyper dramatic or like hyper exaggerated and even like animated like ways, she's detaching her as a person from like Sophie the artist in a way. And I feel like that also adds to like not the mystique but like the power of her music overall. Like she's able to have like this sound and this aesthetic but also separate herself away from it, so she's able to like be a background figure as a person, which kind of like shows this kind of duality that Maddie was talking about with like trans feminine people needing to like sell it or like needing to be so far like proving themselves in that, if that's who they are, that AFAB people don't necessarily have. So she's able to like create this distance and play around within that like space and subvert expectation within that in a very strong way, in my opinion.
Definitely.
But also when you were talking about like the mystique or like being away and like we already talked about like this is like the exact opposite, but like we're gonna get back into our favorite toxic masculinity of the weekend. Like they both have this mystique, but they both had this relationship with the media and being detached from it, and then suddenly pushing their face outwards into things. Oh, yeah. And like with these not necessarily extravagant but very like digital graphics, because The Weeknd, he put his like face on the cover of Kissland after like putting out Trilogy, and everyone was like, what is he doing? Like, you don't do interviews, you don't have your face anywhere, no one really knew what you looked like for the longest time, and then your like main debut album, your face is on the cover, and it's one of the worst cover arts possible because it's just his face in the most awkward position. But like Sophie with her album, like she's on the cover and it's her there, which is like not a way you typically see her either. So I feel like there's this like duality with like becoming popular and gaining notoriety, that they're able to like have a personal facing self and also have like a public facing self. Although like The Weeknd has like, where he is now, he's embraced like being in the limelight and is connected to people in a different way that he's been doing a lot more recently, but definitely wasn't always like that. But I feel like Sophie will continue like to do that just for the virtue of like the type of music she makes and who she is. And like in like she's able to push like the acceptability of like certain forms of palatability, I think, with like her ability to be vulnerable with like who she is and like her visuals. And even though they're over exaggerated, there's still there's still a lot of her in them. But this has been a great podcast over a lot of topics that I didn't think we would get into necessarily. But I feel like we did a great job, just to pat ourselves in the back in the audio form. Shout out to everybody in the pod. Got Tracy, we got Maddie, and we got Matt.
We got Machiavelli.
True that.
And we got Machiavelli. But one of the last things we'll touch on is the state of the industry. As everyone knows, movie theaters ain't doing too good. And there's been a lot of like workers' relief funds. We still have the Portland Workers Relief Fund that we'll link in the podcast as well in our show notes, because they're still taking donations, I believe, but they've gotten like pretty far into their goal. But just like, I feel like the indie film community is, and like the repertory theater community is like coming into itself and trying to like strengthen itself in this time in a way that's like kind of beautiful to see. Like even distributors, although Sam wasn't here, he provided us some information with IFC. IFC has put together this indie theater revival project by creating some retrospectives of film that they're going to give to repertory theaters to book for free once the pandemic is over. So they're like, they don't have to pay any cost for the distribution, which is like one of us at Fifth Ave's like a large part of our budget. Like our budget's kind of split into two pieces. It's paying ourselves to run the theater is half the budget, and the other half is the money that we have to spend on programming for everyone. And them offering to provide like this like service of like these fees can be anywhere from like $400 to $1,000 to screen a film, and them waiving those fees to rent them to theaters so they can make a profit is extremely commendable in my opinion, because people could see it like kind of as a publicity point, but to me I feel like this is like actual solidarity. Like they're willing to take a loss so theaters can start getting back to like try and rebuild like community and like this industry that has like allowed them as like a distributor and producer to flourish.
It's just really dope of IFC for doing that. Mainly of course for supporting independent theaters when IFC itself has its own independent theater in New York. Staying true to like their core values, and the fact that they a lot of the films in their disposal are like films that were primarily made independently, and get a lot of like love from independent theaters. So it's dope for them to bring that back to independent theaters, and I really hope we're able to like use that in the near future.
It feels really full circle, like with who IFC supports. It really definitely holds that up, but also like to everyone who's listening to this podcast, you're supporting Fifth Avenue. We are very much so in that vein of being student run, being people that still continue to project film and trying to continue to support the film community at large in Portland. Like, it's really nice that that's gonna be a thing.
Looks like it's about that time, folks. Thank you for listening to the Fifth Avenue podcast, where we come together to bring you the latest in movies, movie theaters, and marvelous musings. If you like the show today, please follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Fifth Avenue Cinema. That's Fifth Ave with a 5, where you can also reach us for questions or comments. You can also reach us by email at film@pdx.edu. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and as much as we enjoy making it. Catch you next week.
My face is the front of shop.